Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Seibel. I'm a senior planner with the City County Planning and Development Department. We changed names, and I haven't had many opportunities to say our new department name. Um, so this is our first conversation introducing a Bragtown region Oxford-Hamlin small area plan. I know that's a mouthful. This area includes many different neighborhoods, and we'll look at a map at the area and talk about um, the key points of interest and how we can reach folks in different areas. This purpose of this meeting really is to introduce the project to a smaller group of folks, folks that we've heard are interested or have spoken about this area in recent development projects, and really help us get started, help us know who to reach out to, um, and what other kinds of engagement methods we should be considering as we start this planning process. So like I said, my name is Kayla Seibel. We can do some introductions since we're a small group if folks feel comfortable. Um, I really don't have a long prompt, just your name, where you live, anything else you want us to know. That would be helpful. I can start. I'll hand it over to Scott, and maybe Scott, you can pick pick someone to go next. Um, yeah, I said my name three times. Kayla Seibel, senior planner. I've been with the department for 7 years, and before working on this project, I was primarily working on the Durham Comprehensive Plan. So I recognize some of you from that process, and yeah, just love doing long range planning and community planning and working with folks to think about their communities. I've lived in Durham for over 10 years. It's a great place to be. And yeah, that's just a little bit about me. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, I'm Scott Whiteman. I'm the community planning manager for the planning and development department. Me and my group are, among other things, working on our new small area planning program. We've also started one in the Lakewood area, and we recently had one adopted in Walltown. I've been working here for almost 20 years now. Let me all. Well, I know you're next on my screen, so I'll have you go.
I'm Helena. I live on Old Oxford, very close to Carver in the old Cattsburg Country Store. So I have the esteemed pleasure of being both a Bragtown and a Oxford-Hamlin person. Um, I'm gonna say Ajax is next on my screen.
Hey y'all, Ajax Woolley. I'm a Durhamite and resident on Bon Air Avenue since 2001. So I'm at the northern edge of so-called Colonial Village and a block east of the Roxborough commercial corridor around Murray Avenue. Matt, how about how about you?
Hey everyone, my name is Matt Palm. I'm a partner with the Bragtown Community Association. I'm a professor at UNC. I don't actually live in the neighborhood, but I'm just here for support. And with that, I'll pass on to Donna.
Good evening, Donna Frederick. I'm resident of Bragtown in the lower end of Colonial Village, and I'm here to find out what is this project about.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. Emmy Grace, I see you introduced yourself in the chat. Um, you're welcome to introduce yourself by voice, but I see your introduction. You live in Northgate Park. Thank you for joining. I guess Constance, right? I haven't heard from you yet. Do you want to introduce yourself? If Constance, if you're not there right now, we can go ahead and go to Natalie Pickett.
Hi, I'm Natalie Pickett. I live in Oxford-Hamlin community off Hamlin Road, just into the county. And I'm eating dinner, so I have my camera off, but I'll turn it back on after that. But yeah, I'm excited to be in this group to talk more about small area planning.
Awesome. Yes, no worries. It's dinner time. I would be eating dinner too right now if I could. All right. Hey, Vanessa, I think you're last on the list. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Vanessa Mason Evans. I have lived in Bragtown all of my life. And just here to see and hear what's going on with this new small area plan for Bragtown and Hamlin Road.
Great. Thank you for joining.
Mm-hmm.
I see your note here, Constance. Looks like you can't unmute. Um, Let me know if you need help with that or if you're okay with using the chat. Um, we can definitely see your notes in the chat. Okay, let me share my screen again. I promise you I don't have too many slides. Okay, thanks, Constance. See your note there. I don't have too many slides. I promise I won't bore you all with too many of those for the rest of the evening. I definitely want this to be a conversation and hear your questions for us and to really have this be a brainstorming space. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, here we are. All right, so thank you for introducing yourselves. It's good to see representation from really the all of that big area that we'll look at on the map. I just want to make sure that you all have some basic information about this project. Again, we're in the very beginning stages of this, so there's lots of room to shape it and help make this a useful planning process for us. And we have plenty of time at the end for questions. And of course, you can put your questions in the chat. And if Scott or I are able to answer, we can answer it throughout. So, what is a small area plan? That's kind of one of the basic questions. So, the city and county have started a series of small area plans. Some of you may have heard of the Walltown Small Area Plan that was adopted this past August, and the start of the Lakewood, Lion Park, and West End Small Area Plans. So, this would be our third one, kind of rolling into that small area planning process. These plans are helpful for staff and residents to dig deeper into issues specific to an area and develop policies and recommendations for new development specifically. But as we work together, you'll likely have community priorities that aren't just about new development, and those are helpful too because those can inform city and county projects or programs, things that the city and county can work on to help in either improve things in a neighborhood or work together on projects that are important to folks. So I'll navigate to a quick web page that we have on small area plans for more information. Um, it's really broad right now because each small area plan can be different depending on what the specific needs are for a community. But I can show you some examples of components of a small area plan. So, and I will share out these slides for you all, and I'll send an email with the links as well, so you'll have all this. So on our web page, we have kind of a landing page for what our small area plans, how it relates to a Durham comprehensive plan, and links to the ongoing plans that have started. I think that there's one of the most important drop-down menus of these things. These here are what's in a small area plan, and it's a long list of things that could be in it. I think primarily what tends to be in them are an assessment of transportation conditions, if there are infrastructure projects that are needed in a community. We collect those, list those. Hopefully, we can tie them to either existing funding sources or somehow tie them to how they would get implemented. Community needs assessments that could be more than infrastructure. It could be other things um, like park renovations or the need for green space or conservation. We can assess city and county owned parcels if those exist in a community, to see if folks are interested in what those can look like in the future. And of course, a big way a small area plan can be useful is looking at if there are large areas of land that are being looked at for new development, then working with the community to have a say, a vision into what that should be before a development proposal comes forward to the planning department from a developer. So that is one way we can be proactive with our planning is if we engage in these conversations now and provide that direction to city council or the county board of commissioners for what residents want to see, how their neighborhood changes. So as we work together, we'll get into what these specific deliverables will be for the Bragtown area. And I know that there are disparate needs across the whole area. There's different needs. We have a more rural area near Oxford-Hamlin, and then a more densifying and commercial area near Roxborough Street. So we'll figure out ways to map those out and make sure it's specific to each area. So we can start talking about the Bragtown and Oxford-Hamlin area. I do also have a web page for that right here where we are going to be uploading information on engagement events, and I'll be uploading this video and the Spanish video for this. I see the question in the chat, who is intended to be the end audience? Yes, so the main users of a small area plan are going to be the planning department and the city council. As the city council gets applications for new development that might require rezoning or some sort of big development that requires a public hearing, planning staff looks at this plan, and we also look at the comprehensive plan to assess its consistency to see if the development is meeting what the plan says. And sometimes provide a recommendation, but really just lay out like how consistent the development is. It's also, we think that small area plans can also be really useful for residents as an advocacy tool to help keep local government accountable to what they've adopted in their plans. So if there is a specific vision in the plan outlined for a specific site and that's been adopted by the city council, then that can be something that the community rallies around and can really speak to. Scott, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, the end audience is mostly the city and county government. We as the planning department would use it the most, but and it guides the elected officials. But it's also what other departments like our transportation department or our environmental and street services department we will work with them to try to get recommendations from the plan into city and county budgets as well, or help prioritize which projects get taken on first or that sort of thing. So we want it to be useful to everybody, but to Helena's question, it's kind of it's for, you're telling the city and county what to do, basically.
Great, thanks, Scott. So quickly back to the web page with some basic information about the project phases. This it's a simple graphic. Let me just navigate to the top of my page here. Simple graphics showing that we anticipate this planning effort to take about a year, starting with this winter, so between now, February, March-ish, working together to develop the community priorities for the plan, what folks see as the most important things that the plan needs to address, diving into the key issues, so whatever folks have said are rising to the top of their list, bringing in city and county departments to help us dig into those topics and figure out how they fit into the plan. We anticipate that around the summer. around fall, if there are sites, which we think there are, if there are areas that could be redeveloped or have new development on them, working with folks in the community to see what residents want to see there, what kinds of policies we should put in place for that new development. And then, and also I mentioned the infrastructure needs. If there are things that are critical infrastructure, like there are parts of this study area that are in the county that potentially over time the city could consider annexation or folks could apply to be annexed into the city, what kinds of infrastructure those areas might need for that. And then looking into next winter, releasing a draft of the plan before we even start the adoption process. So that would be staff pulling all of the information together that we worked on over the past year into a document that records and recommends all the things we've talked about, sharing it back with residents for any final edits before we present it for the elected officials to consider adopting it. So there are multiple phases of engagement in each of these steps. I would say you can expect an engagement round for each of these kind of key areas, milestones. And then there are ways to engage kind of like one-on-one with me or Scott throughout the process as well, which I'll get into later. So just quickly looking at the planning area map. So on this webpage, we have an interactive map, which we sometimes we use interactive maps and sometimes we use static PDFs. So I would love feedback over time on how usable this is and if we can make things easier to use with a lot of different data. I know folks really interested in seeing different land use data layered on each other, and so we want to make sure that that's accessible to folks. Um, so on this map, anybody can access this. You have a way to turn on and off layers if it looks too cluttered or there's too much going on here. So I'm gonna quickly turn off the parcel layer. I think I already did that. Yeah. Turn off the parcels and then turn off the city and county boundary for now, just so I can go through the area. So this is kind of like a Google map. You can put in an address at the top to orient yourself. But the study area is this in yellow. So even though this is called a small area plan, it's fairly large. It encompasses several neighborhoods. It's a mix of city and county boundaries. And just to orient you, here is I-85. I know most people are familiar with this. Roxborough Street corridor. Um, let's see, obviously Bragtown and Colonial Village to the south. This is the Compare Foods Shopping Center and then the Beaver Creek Marsh. And to the north, the Oxford Commons Shopping Center. Let's see, Carver and this area extends to Oxford, Carver, and Hamlin. So here's Carver going from west to east and Old Oxford and Hamlin Road here. And so that's where we see more of the mix of city and county limits. So like I mentioned before, we know that this area has a lot of different things going on. There's a mix of more urban areas. There's commercial corridor. There are those huge shopping centers that are older that might redevelop over time, and there's significant environmental features going on there in this area. So a lot of places where we can really dive in and see what's needed as our community grows. So as far as how this boundary was drawn, we looked at a number of features, including roads being like a natural boundary, natural features like Ellaby Creek, so that being kind of a border here. and future place types in our comprehensive plan, so how we anticipate this area to change, um, and also what development has already happened in recent years and will be unlikely to change in the near future. So we can certainly dig into this a little bit more. I did want to say that one maybe interesting layer to turn on is the city of Durham boundary. It shows like in a hatched area all the places that are within the city, and then the areas that are kind of highlighted and popping out are the areas in the county. And like I said, this is I didn't mention this already, but it's all within what we're calling our urban growth boundary, which is everything within the urban growth boundary we can expect over time that the city is interested in annexing into the city. So that's why we want to look at these specifically county areas in more detail to see what they would need and how that transition over time would work. I see your hand is up, Ajax. Do you want to jump in?
I don't want to cut you off. Is it okay
Oh,
to
go ahead.
ask a question? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Thanks so much. So I have actually it's a two-part question. One is is this a draft and how would what's the distance between the draft and agreeing on the final boundary? That's the first part of the question. Actually, I know it's a draft, so the real question is, what's the distance between this draft and the final determination of the actual work area for the group? And then, since we're the third small area plan in the sequence, um, can you give us the acreage by comparison with the other two?
Great question about the acreage. I do have the acreage. I just have to bring it up. I've had that written down. I don't know in comparison. Scott, do you? I know you probably don't have this in your head,
Mhm.
but it's it's big.
Yeah.
I so I do. It's about 9 times the size of either of the other two areas.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll just bookmark that and
Okay.
maybe can come back to it later.
Oh no, I mean that's great. Yeah. And as far as the question around the boundaries, and yes, yes, they are draft. Yes, they can be changed. We've looked at these boundaries a lot from a different data points perspectives, but that doesn't mean it can't change. Doesn't mean there can't be some compelling reasons to change them. Scott, did you want to speak on that? I know this comes up every time we look at a small area plan. Are the boundaries? Do you have thoughts
Yeah.
on it?
Yeah, I could say I knew in Durham we don't have really a lot of really firm neighborhood boundaries like some cities do. So it's a little bit hard for us to say, well, this is Bragtown and that's not Bragtown. So we know we're trying to keep communities that have kind of similar interests together, where the development activity and any city infrastructure development would affect them kind of similarly. Trying to not have them so small that we're not having enough impact because there's not enough people involved, but also trying not to make it so big that it's unwieldy. So that's kind of the motivation between this. It's I know it's kind of this Kayla mentioned several distinct neighborhoods kind of all together, which don't there aren't really firm boundaries between them. So we don't want to cut somebody out and include somebody else, but we certainly get some feedback from you like, yeah, this is definitely not part of our neighborhood, or this is a really important site that we kind of consider part of, the Bragtown area, and then we can look at moving the boundary. It is not fixed by any means.
Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, great question. Okay, I see another hand. Natalie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask while we're talking about, well, you before you were talking about city and county. And so, well, my first question is just to make sure I heard something earlier right, and then I have another question for that. But You said the final step of this whole process is that city council votes to implement it or whatever that verb would
Yeah,
be,
adopt. Yeah.
adopt it. And so do you know, like, does that still work the exact same way for this plan, which includes area outside of the city, or would the county commissioners also adopt? Like, is that relevant?
That's a great
Yeah,
question,
so,
Scott.
yeah, this one we sometimes shorthand approvals by saying city council because that's where most of our stuff is. But this one, it's a very good point, Natalie. This one includes both the city and the county. So both the city council and the county commission would approve this plan.
Okay.
Uh,
So they both would look at the whole plan
they would both
and
look at
vote
the
it.
whole plan.
Yeah.
Hyper technically, the city council only has jurisdiction over what's currently in the city, and the county commission
Right.
has jurisdiction over everything else. And they theoretically could come to different conclusions, but well, that's not preferable, obviously.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
we'll try to get a plan that has consensus among all the participants, and that we think that both the city and the county electeds would be willing to support and approve and eventually implement.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. I think one other thing I just want to mention about this map, if there are other layers of data that you really want to see here, I can work with our GIS folks to help add those layers here so you can them on and off and see kind of data together. So just wanted to mention that this is like, want this to be kind of a two-way feedback for how we can make this information usable for you and accessible, and that we're open to trying new things. Yeah, Helena, did you have a question or a thought?
Yes, I think I have a little bit of anxiety about the timing of this with the UDO. And just in looking at the side-by-side comparison tool that is a part of the UDO, it feels like any version of a map that I look at could have three different place types or zoning types or future type. Like I'm wondering if that is a layer that could be added to see if there's an incongruity that we want to make sure to highlight before the UDO gets finalized.
Yeah, definitely. Scott, I was thinking about this too, that I mean these are obviously related. The new zoning map is gonna have a huge impact on how this area is developing. Two, Scott, did you have any thoughts on like either the layer or other kinds of things related to the new UDO?
Yeah, there's a layer available. We should be able to put it on this map so that it's easily
Okay.
accessible.
Okay, so technologically we can do this for sure, and then we can do deep dive into the new zoning. Um, and guess I guess that brings up questions about like a timing about like when the new UDO is adopted. Um, So there could be opportunity as we're looking at this area and the draft UDO map. If folks have thoughts they want to bring in the public hearing process, we could consider those. Okay. Donna? Oh, Donna,
Oh, yeah,
oh,
sorry. I'm on
there you
mute.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, similar question. I would like to see if there's an overlay with public owned land and paper streets.
Yes. You are thinking along our same lines. For sure. I didn't want to overwhelm with data, but certainly we'll want to look at this like city or yeah, publicly owned land and the paper streets and what how those could connect or what folks want to see out of those paper streets.
Thank you.
Yeah, just writing this down. Okay, I my only other slide I had besides just like what's next and ways to stay. up to date is some questions for you all. Let me just share again. Let's see. So we can again we can take this in any order. Um, but I think when as staff we don't always know who and how to reach folks. So we rely on getting residents that we do hear from together to help us think through that. So either in the chat or by email or here, however works for you. Who needs to be engaged? Who's missing from this conversation? Ideas for reaching people and spreading the word. We have some engagement methods we've tried. We have some equitable engagement methods that we're thinking about, but certainly are not like tied down to any specific method right now. And then one challenge with this area, as some of you probably know, is having a large meeting space. We don't always need to have large events, but sometimes for specific exercises or for big launches of a project, we do. And I know Edison Johnson Recreation Center is not within the study boundary, but it's kind of close. I just want to float that idea if folks have opinions about that location as we look at a community-wide launch in the kind of early winter, early spring time frame, or if there's somewhere else we can look at for events and for engagement. And then, of course, questions for us. We can take these in any order, or you can just whatever comes to mind. But those are some of the question prompts that I had.
But I want to leave room for others that famous for holding the mic for too long. So, but I'm not trying to get out of here early.
Okay.
Anybody want to head me off at the pass here?
I think Donna has hand up.
Thanks, Ajax. So 3 questions. Number one, the sheer size. And I know we talked about it earlier that it's not final in its geographical, but I also would like to see when we talked about layers, an economical layer. I would like to see that because that has a lot to do with infill, the gross income of one area of Bragtown versus the other. Would like to see if I know the data's there, but like to see that on a map. And I think most importantly, like who needs to be here? I think all of or some of the planning and some of the city county officials need to tour Bragtown to actually see firsthand what that looks like. Because this on a map, if you've never been down the street, you have no idea what it looks like, how it connects or doesn't connect. And so I think that's crucial. If you're going to be doing plan, we like to have a little bus trip, a couple of them. And as far as a meeting place, it's kind of like ironic that you're putting something that's technically, you know, off Duke Street, and the boundary that you've drawn is Roxborough Street, which goes to show there is no large meeting space in such a huge area where people can congregate, speaks to the problem at hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. I just want to make sure I understand your requests for data around economics. I'm thinking like household income type demographic information. Is that what, and
Yeah, household,
okay.
I guess household income, but also sales,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I mean, we're in this new stage right now, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, gotcha. I'm tracking. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Vanessa.
Well, I guess I wanted to say, I know in talking with different people, I know for some people that don't see Bragtown as being the boundaries that's within that map, but I've been here for years, and that's what Bragtown was as I was growing up. I know it can change. The boundaries are fine if it changes. And I know some people don't consider themselves in Bragtown. For example, like Northgate or Colonial Village. That's fine if they don't want to be in it. But my thing is, you have areas that have been underserved that you have to look at totally different from areas that have the privilege of having all the things that some areas don't have, like just basic sidewalks or bus stops. So I guess in our meeting as a group, I think something that we need to find out too is what areas do we not want to include in it as a small area plan, and what areas you do want to include. This is just something I'm thinking, because this is a large map, and I know everyone doesn't want to consider themselves a part of Bragtown, but I feel there's a lot of great history in Bragtown, and I love knowing that there's many neighborhoods in Bragtown, and I'm hoping that we can kind of come to some conclusions that we will have areas where people will not be pushed out because of the high prices of housing, taxes, the gentrification that's happening, and it's happening rapidly. And for areas that I know that it's happening rapidly is like Colonial and Northgate, and it's slowly hitting areas of Bragtown like Maplewood Drive and other streets that I know of. So having boundaries to make sure we can keep people in their places, even if they don't make a 80 or 100 or $200,000 income a year.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those thoughts, Vanessa. I think it is such a huge area, and when we were trying to think of what to call this project, we struggled a lot because we could mention every name, but then every name that has like a neighborhood name, or but that doesn't capture, folks who identify maybe with the street name for their neighborhood or something. So we could change the name if we need to. But so we're trying to describe this as a huge collection of an area that includes Bragtown, includes Oxford-Hamlin area and Colonial Village. So just just some thoughts about namings.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm letting people know I
Yeah.
respect every area of Bragtown.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I'm just saying whether they want to be included or not included,
Yeah.
I'm willing to work with however what works best for all of us that's on this call.
Oh, gotcha. Understood. Thank you. Okay. I'm not sure who had their hand up first, Matthew or Helena.
Matthew.
Okay, go ahead, Matthew.
Okay. I just wanted to say, your question was who should be in the room. And I think a lot of those folks are here, right? Like the Bragtown Community Association has a lot of members who are here and folks from different parts of the neighborhood. And part of it might be going to the BCA and engaging the BCA as opposed to necessarily drawing people out to other events. But I think the challenge is like a lot of community organizations are just like entirely like volunteer run. And so, don't have the resources to necessarily engage with such a huge area, and like getting into the weeds on all of those streets is going to like, it just seems like a very daunting undertaking. And I understand why it sounds like you wanted to put kind of like areas with like areas, if I understand, and that's how the structure was drawn up. Um, but also in terms of like potential impact. So I guess my thinking on this is related to, you know, what is it called? The Northgate Mall, right? And so like so the community around that, how they were impacted. Well, if I look at that map, like let's say Oxford Commons could end up being totally redeveloped. I don't know if that map necessarily includes everyone who would be affected by it, right? Like it's got some people who would and some people who wouldn't. So I guess I would want to know what are the big changes that are coming that we think are coming that might be coming that could inform maybe how the boundaries are shaped, and maybe what is sort of prioritized in this conversation is just a question that comes to mind for me, because I think something the BCA has been a leader in has been kind of proactively going to new developments and talking to developers and tangible gains for the community for current residents, right? It isn't just about future residents, it's also about current residents. And something that's come up in our meetings over the last few months has been like, if some of these areas get redeveloped and, new restaurants and things come in or whatever, making sure that caters to existing residents too, and not just to, whoever the future kind of condo owners are going to be or whatnot. Um, I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's yeah, you hit on so many important points there around the if yeah, especially if Oxford Commons redevelops, that impact is more than just the study area that we have here. And how do we break this down in the limited capacity that folks might have to spend to spend engaging with this? Scott and I have talked a little bit about trying to like if we could how we can break out the engagement into sub areas so that we can really dive in deep and make use of folks' time on the issues they really care about. So, yeah, Scott, did you have thoughts on that? No, no answers. Just I appreciate the comment, and we can think more about that.
Yeah, I think, well, one of the reasons why we want to included that area that kind of between Old Oxford and Carver Street, where I know a lot of people in the community have already had a lot of engagement with developers on those areas, and um, wanted to make sure that we continued doing that and working with Greater Bragtown on those issues, even though most of it's already been zoned. There's still quite a bit of land up there. Um, and including some of those bigger shopping centers, which tend to be the areas that redevelop first because they're large. And we've had some success working in Walltown on the Northgate Mall. That was kind of a big focus of that plan, if you probably heard, and also in Lakewood on the little shops at Lakewood. So we want to try to make sure that people have a chance to talk about the areas that could have really big impacts if they, change dramatically over in the near or midterm.
Yeah, Helena, did you have something you wanted to say?
I guess I'm intrigued about the idea of subgroups as one way to overcome that this area plan is huge, um, with disparate interests or needs. Um, and it almost feels like it's partially so big because there's an intention to include all the commercial along Roxborough, which Lord knows that's a whole project unto itself to have some real tangible thematic plan for commercial along Roxborough, but putting the elephant in the room, like Colonial Village and Northgate Park, are fundamentally very different from the rest of Bragtown and Oxford-Hamlin, particularly to Donna's point about I'll just call it census data or differences in demographics. So I'm just curious how much we have to play with, or when would be the point we would figure out some of those subgroups or taking parts out.
Yeah, that's definitely something we want to do fairly early on because like we wouldn't want to invite a bunch of people and then uninvite them, I guess. And then we also don't want to add areas like late in the process and when folks didn't have a chance to really participate. Um, so yeah, I think that's something particularly if you all the folks on this call want to think about, and if there are a fatal flaw in this map that you all see that we missed, we'd be definitely open to feedback on that.
Um,
Go ahead.
I tried to stack after Helena, but I don't want to jump in if anybody was about to go. But so I'll speak for myself first, and then I'll broaden out a little bit. I am very passionate about community development, and I'm very interested in my neighborhood being healthy and happy and successful. Um, and as far as where collaborating with my neighbors on a small area plan fits into that, um, it's a requirement for me to firmly establish that it's going to be an anti-racist exercise. And I think that that's possible to do in this day and age in Durham, but I think it's not automatic. And I think that what we're uh, what we're finding in this conversation is a little bit of an edge around some of the equity issues. So, um, the area, like, okay, square kilometers or acres or whatever. I mean, that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, and I think very highly of you, Kayla. I think very highly of you, Scott, and your work. I think very highly of the department writ large, actually. Um, and unless you're about to send us 10 times the staff that were engaged at Walltown and Lakewood, then I think it isn't appropriate from an equity lens to describe an area that's. I went to 10. Sorry, it's about 9 point something. So, you know, but it, I, even though it isn't as simple as area, um, I mean, I was in JCCPC when one of the county commissioners asked what by right means. So we are starting from, as a community, a place that is, I think, fairly typical of many neighborhoods in the sense that we have some like really passionate. No one is more dedicated to their neighborhood than Miss Vanessa, Donna, Miss Constance, Helena. I mean, you're talking about the dyed in the wool community folk here. And to Helena's point about subgroups, I mean, one way to approach it would be to say, well, who do you feel you can represent? You know what I mean? Because if you don't, if here's the meeting, here's the initial call for participation. If you don't have participation from business owners at Oxford Commons, and you don't have participation from Colonial Village, I'm not here for Colonial Village. I'm here to support my neighbors in Bragtown. Just make that very clear. We're doing just fine in Colonial Village. If you came out on Halloween night, you would see Colonial Village has essentially become Northgate Park East at this point. And that doesn't mean that there aren't challenges, transportation issues, crosswalks that are dangerous. Yeah, it'd be nice to have some bike lanes here and there. But let's be real for a second. I mean, the um, the structural racism, the historic segregation, the failed subsidized housing efforts, uh, the disinvestment and incomplete subdivision and incomplete development of streets and connector paths is front and center in Red Maple Park community area, in at Martin and Dearborn, Bluefield, um, Oxford Manor. Uh, you know, that's who's missing for me in this space. Where is Miss L from Bluefield? Where is Tammy Farrell from Oxford Manor? Because they deserve, after the literal blood, sweat, and tears of decades and raising children and grandchildren in those environments, to have a fighting chance to impact on the outcome of how DHA's redevelopment plans will roll out over the coming decade. And that is something that the city can apply some influence on. Let me get very specific about this. For the planners, here's two reads that you may already be looking at, 129439 and 129428. That's 129439 and 129428. There's a vacant lot that used to have a community center in the middle of Kerwood. And if you ask the people in the community who frankly wouldn't even know that a Zoom meeting about a small area plan is taking place, you know, if not for the efforts of the other people in this room. So we need something for the youth to do. We need a safe place for the youth. And so to talk about having having to have our community meetings at Edison Johnson, when I was at the Walltown convenings, you know, Walltown has a rec center. I was at the Lakewood West End meetings. They filled the conference space at Lime Park, you know. And so my fear is that in our eagerness to participate and support what I think is a really earnest and I think what you've got right here is the sequence, meaning Bragtown should be next, definitely. That part I wholeheartedly agree with. Um, Even though there are many other small areas in Durham that are well deserving of this type of attention also. However, um, the struggle to apply the equity lens and the struggle for BCA to stay in these public conversations in a way that promotes anti-racist community development has already been going on for years. It doesn't begin with this small area plan. So really, you all are the ones who are coming into a conversation that's already taking place. And so if the resident leaders in the room are saying, this feels overwhelming by scale or by size, you know, I mean, there's not enough shoe leather in this group to answer your questions. The questions are well intended and they're posed with sincerity. However, you kind of already have the answer by looking around at who's in the room. And I don't mean to Natalie, I don't know you very well. I only saw you at the city council meeting the other night speak. Emmy Grace, I don't know you. You mentioned you're in Northgate Park, and that's great. You know, I raised my kids in Northgate Park at the actual park because we don't have a park in Colonial Village, so we have to cross Roxborough and go over to Northgate Park to the park. But guess what? You ain't gonna walk from Bluefield down to Northgate Park, even though that's exactly what had to happen when Ms. L wanted to do a bike club. Like that's where they. How do you ride bikes safely from Bluefield down Club Boulevard down to Northgate Park? So I realize my soapbox is growing with each passing second here, but I'm at the place where I would love to work with this group and I would love to work with you all on this. And I'm also um, experienced enough to know that the design of the container is extremely important. And if we needed to spend 6 months designing the container for the process, that would be time well spent, especially if you think about the fact that potentially you've also got people in here who want to be part of the political process involved with the UDO rewrite. So you're really asking for dual enrollment in volunteer engagement, right, on extremely vital land use issues. Now, if there are to Helena's earlier point, if there are, I don't think the digital map is enough. I think we need some engagement, some specific engagement with y'all as planners around our commercial property owners who are in the room tonight, right? I'm just a single family residential parcel owner. So don't worry about me. I'm going to be just fine. I'm interested in the deeper conversation around Ms. Vanessa's holdings adjacent to the Roxborough Rail Trail. I'm interested in Helena's work with Oxford-Hamlin and what's it called? Carver Street Assemblage project, and where all of that future annexation and infrastructure planning and transportation planning is headed. Like, I'm interested in a community center in Red Maple Park community so that we can say we gave something back after all these years. And you could take any one of those three projects and call it a small area plan, right? So I really don't need to hear about the Roxborough commercial corridor. I really don't need to hear about Campari and stuff. I need to hear about how is this becoming an anti-racist planning exercise. Otherwise, I have no choice but to focus my attention elsewhere. And I would recommend that others, follow suit, and I would make the case for that. But I want to do it. I just want to do it right. Thanks. I'm done.
Yeah, I appreciate
And thanks and sorry.
No, I appreciate that. I hear you. There's so much to think about here. This is why we're talking like now. Um, we have there's time to change how we're doing things. So that makes sense, and that we're working within our constraints. Vanessa, I want to make sure you have time to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't want this meeting to end up being a meeting where y'all are just checking us off as a checklist. All the engagement, all the things that have happened in the past, it's like it just went out the window. And I know everybody on this call has a passion for the community. That's including Natalie and all of us. I know when you go out to the county areas, we haven't gone through it yet. But if y'all should change and annex that in, how much accountability are y'all going to give to those developers that's going in and dynamiting and messing up people's wells and foundations? There's so many things that didn't happen the first go round, or these rounds that have happened. I would hope y'all would learn from previous incidences and community coming to y'all and saying that they had a need that they felt they were ignored and they had to take care of their issues themselves. I don't think that's fair to anybody. Y'all want to build out. I know for me, if I lived in the county, I wouldn't want people just coming in and developing and not hearing the real concerns of the people, or not having things in place to say, y'all are going to be accountable to any damage, or the developers will be accountable to the damages that they may cause. I don't feel that's fair to anyone in Durham who pays their taxes, goes to work every day. I'm like Ajax. I don't want to be bamboozled and hoodwinked. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm so tired of black people and brown and indigenous people not getting what is fairly theirs. I want what's mine, and I know Helena wants what's hers. She didn't go out there and just build up this beautiful sanctuary for someone to come in and take it and make it what they want it to be. It's just like we didn't make this meeting. Y'all made this meeting. So how much of this is really us, or is it all of y'all, and you just putting us in the room to say y'all had our faces and our voices in the space to get a check mark? I don't want to see that. It's happened too many times. I hope and pray that y'all will truly listen to the community and what the community is saying they want. This is truly, it's detrimental if y'all just let these developers come in here and do what they're doing. I look at Roxborough Road, and already we have a developer that got his approval in 23, and now he's going to put in 300 luxury apartments where the Durham Tech area is at, where they have torn down all the buildings. We have 156 units that's going in at Dearborn and Old Oxford. We got TED stuff that's coming in. That's over 200 some houses plus apartments. You're not thinking about the traffic. Where it was once upon a time, I could just pull up to my driveway, look both ways, and go out. Some days now, it takes me 10 to 15 minutes to get out of my driveway. And the madness hasn't even started yet. I'm looking at Durham 85. All this stuff is being built up. Our roads are not built for the traffic that's going to come. So I'm just saying, I know it's going to come no matter what. And I know y'all supposed to be building all out the Rougemont. But I hope y'all will take in consideration the people who were in those spaces before you let developers come in here and build what they want to build. Because when they build what they build, they come, they make their money, and they're gone. And once it's done, it's over. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just like once the UDO is changed, how much say will the residents of Durham have in saying what they want to see in their community? Once this UDO is changed, how much truly? Are we just wasting our time? Because I'm looking at what happened with Brandon and Audrey in Northgate. They worked on that for years, and now all the work they've done has just been dropped, and a whole new developers come in. So I'm looking, and I'm watching, and I'm listening. Just want y'all to know.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. I really appreciate the honesty and everyone who's spoken about issues with government processes in the past, feeling like you don't want to waste your time on this, that there are ways to get deeper into this process and more specific to what people actually need and want. So I'm hearing that. I'm glad we're recording this because I can revisit and reach out to folks after the call to like get deeper into how to make this process make sense and that's actually useful to you all and not just something that planners need, for for our work plan. Um, so yeah, I'm sorry if I don't have like responses or answers right now, but I need to take all this in and see how me and Scott can change course. I see a comment. Oh. Um, so it says, I'm curious to hear perhaps from Emmy whether Northgate Park Neighborhood Association had anticipated engaging in this process that currently does not encompass any streets in Northgate. Yeah, I'm curious.
Hey,
Yeah.
so I'm Emmy, and my sister Carrie's also with me. We're both on the board of Northgate
Hey.
Park Neighborhood Association. Um, and that's a good question. I'd say one, I don't know how much, um, there hasn't been like explicit conversation about the small area plan, but in terms of the what's it called?
The Heritage Neighborhood new program, we did have some very intentional conversation about not wanting to step on Bragtown's toes on that. And even sometimes when it comes to some colonial village like collaboration, making sure that there isn't a feeling of being like annexed into Northgate Park. So basically, I don't think anybody, for the most part in the neighborhood, would be upset about being excluded from the planning area. I will say I think we still have a right to participate in the process because it does impact, this, being adjacent.
And then likewise with the Walltown Northgate Mall plan, like we're kind of like sandwiched in between and not necessarily in either of the boundaries, but I think both of the areas or subsets of the areas impact where residents live, work, play. So
So I guess one thought I was having during this conversation was maybe splitting off the North Roxborough corridor as a separate project, maybe would allow the proper attention to be focused on some of the other topics that were raised when it comes to like community and recreation space and some of the other infrastructure needs. I as a planner myself, I would love to see North Roxborough become less car oriented with different land uses and more multimodal transportation. So yeah, that's a big thing to chew anyway. So I could see those being like yeah, split into multiple projects.
Can I say something? So I'm curious. Well, I guess I just wanted to share some thoughts about the commercial piece. And I totally hear and support like the concerns coming from folks in other parts of this area that, the Bragtown parts of this area about like what's included and not. I think in a lot of the development cases that have come up the past few years, especially in this area, um, it's a lot of residential. And so that's been a lot of focus of conversations about housing, affordability, density with that, all that stuff, um, including, Carver Street Assembly, the ones Miss Vanessa just mentioned, and then the one that got voted down this past week that was way out Hamlin that would have been single family. So I want to make room for the commercial blocks in this area and that I think I know some of our neighbors, like we've talked so much about so much residential coming up when we have those developments to deal with. But, we've heard from people too, like concerns about commercial options in this area being like concerns that more and more we'll see businesses that aren't affordable for whatever they're doing, like aren't affordable for the people who live here, for the people who live in Bragtown, for Oxford-Hamlin, like same deal. Businesses that don't provide hardly any jobs, like all the self-storage facilities that are up. Businesses that provide jobs that are super low wages, like the family fair that was proposed on our corner a few years ago that got voted down. So I guess like I don't know where that falls into where the map is drawn, as far as like really wanting to take this opportunity to spend a little more time than normal on some of these commercial areas because typically I know for us, like at least in Oxford-Hamlin, we often are stuck being reactive to developments that come up. Obviously, the point of a small area plan is to be proactive. So I guess I just wanted to name that part of it, and to just that to share some of my interest in this process. When we talked to our neighbors in Oxford-Hamlin, we're out in the county, a lot of people's answer to a lot of like, what do you think about this development they're proposing? We need to kind of respond to it or get engaged in this as a neighborhood. A lot of folks, I mean, planning, you know what I'm about to say, are like anti-development of anything out here ever, like don't touch anything ever. And I have no judgment. I'm pretty neutral about that opinion. Like I totally get it. And also we've had plenty of conversations about like they are gonna do something at some point. Like we have to um pick the battles we are gonna pick, and then we also have to like understand it's gonna come at some point, and we have to like what would you want if something had to be done with that parcel, whatever. And then people do start thinking and have answers. So I'm excited for this to be a little bit of a more structured, ongoing version of that conversation that I do think a lot of our neighbors have been like lulled is the wrong word, but like have been guided towards already before, and now is like a chance to revisit that. So that's all. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Go ahead, Helena.
But I want to lift up the ways that previously at Oxford-Hamlin, we have actually had some very productive, proactive, and intentional conversations about commercial, even pulled out pencils and sketched the form and the size of more neighborhood commercial that we wanted to see, um, so that we're not stuck trying to undo the mess that is Roxborough Street. So I do think that we have an appetite to take the opportunity to proactively define what our community could look like. And that is part of, but it's really a separate side of the coin also from the commercial conversations on the existing. So I don't know where that fits, but I did want to name we do have an appetite to think about commercial. We're not all just like keep it all out of here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Matthew. Oh,
Oh,
sorry, Scott.
and that was something we heard a lot during the comprehensive plan that people wanted more kind of neighborhood commercial near where they lived. But it's really hard at kind of doing it at the countywide scale to figure out like where could that be? Because you don't want to just say, well, your house is now going to be commercial. So I think that's a really good opportunity in this plan, particularly if you all have already thought about it as to maybe where can we put something like that potentially in the future, that would have community support. So yeah, thanks for raising that.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Just to kind of riff on an earlier comment, if a particular community moves forward for this plan, thinking about this idea that these are conversations that have been going on for a while, trying to incorporate what's already been said and how community has already been showing up into the document. I mean, I noticed it was intriguing to see needs assessment listed there, but in a way that has been done over and over and over, right? And so it's about making sure that that's included. It sounds like, I mean, you're on the same page,
Oh
but I
yeah,
think
100. No, thank you so much for bringing that up because I've been digging through like over the last 5 years, departments that have come to residents to ask, what do they need? What do you want for the future? Blah blah blah, and mining things that are related to the zip code or the neighborhoods mentioned. And that's been a good starting point, but obviously I haven't relied on that data. But yes, for sure, making use of like, when y'all give input, when you take time to meet with us and to talk to us, like, don't have that data disappear for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Um,
Mhm.
I'm going to center my radar or compass, is a better word, around this, thinking in terms of what is the Bragtown that Miss Vanessa and Miss Constance and Helena want to leave to the next generation. And I may be out over my skis here a little bit, but I don't think that is going to purely be described in zoning and place type maps on the comprehensive plan. I think that there's a call here for recognizing that no, a small area plan cannot accomplish certain things. However, the reality of real estate development is that developers pay for the privilege of engaging the planning department. They pay their way through the process. They're not necessarily paying you guys directly. They're paying consultants. They're paying architects and engineers and lawyers out the yazoo, right, to engage these processes. Now, when you all come pro bono to the citizens and say, what do you want? How can we help? What are your dreams? And so on and so forth. I think there's like a sacred trust. There's a public trust that's occurring in that moment. And the nature of that public trust is different if the needs in a particular neighborhood have essentially already been met over the years. In other words, instead of like think about certain areas as being over invested instead of under invested in certain areas. Like think of certain. I mean, I must say my block is doing just fine. It's not fine because what has actually happened is that the property values have skyrocketed, and I no longer have any black renter neighbors. That's not okay, but it is what will happen due to the marketplace and forces larger than any of us or anything we're going to control in this room. On the other hand, there are certain things that we know. So we know that when cities do connector trails, it sparks curiosity from outside investors because they see what has happened in Atlanta and they see what's happening in Dallas and they know that the move is on. And those properties will start to be speculated on at a different level once there's some traction And I think there already is some traction around these things. So, I'm unequivocal from my point of view. I'm coming out of this meeting. I'm really glad we got a chance to speak. I had told our team that if you want me to pull back, I'll pull back. I got permission. You know, that rail trail, Roxborough Rail Trail, runs right by Miss Vanessa's property. It runs right by Helena's property. It runs right by Red Maple. And we are already losing precious time in those areas in terms of preventing displacement of legacy residents. Now, I want to name one other thing that hasn't yet come up into this space, which is there are vehicles in the community development space. I'll name a couple, like a community land trust or mixed income neighborhood trust if you want to get really bleeding edge. There are philanthropic models for community ownership and shared equity. They rarely work post gentrification. They can only be employed when the market has not yet captured all of the opportunities in an area, either for acquisition or redevelopment, et cetera. Okay. Now, if we center our conversation around, well, what is actually feasible here? It seems to me, and I could be wrong, you guys correct me, but it seems to me that the policymakers, if they are indeed the as Helena asked and you answered, the end audience, the policymakers, right? Please think about how the areas that I mentioned involve park land owned by the city of Durham, involve vacant and distressed property owned by the city of Durham Housing Authority, which is a quasi-governmental state chartered nonprofit, but its management and its governance is underwritten by city government. And I promise you, after years of activism in that space, we could start now and spend the next 5 years tangling with the issues around, that public land and quasi public land. So what I would ask for from you guys, Scott and Kayla, and indulgence from the rest of the group is kind of like, give us some radical transparency on this. Is there a version of the small area plan process that realistically could potentially lead to tangible tangible results and tangible engagements? And if so, then we need to figure out who is the most vulnerable and who is the most in need of those services. Okay. And be radically transparent. If it isn't going to be realistic to think that the process could result in some actual tangible gains, then go deal with the commercial corridor on Roxborough with the support of people who have plenty of privilege in Northgate Park and Colonial Village to engage in such a process. I don't disagree with Emmy. I just think that in the moment that we're in, if we have to make a choice about how to use these resources that are being allocated by the public trust, we really need to reach down deep and make sure that we're focusing the attention where justice demands that we focus the attention, not just where it's actually feasible to do something. And the final thing that I'll say is, it's okay if the small area plan isn't that. In other words, we know you're not empowered to save any area of town from gentrification. Everybody's an adult in here, right? But the trick here is that If we come out of this meeting thinking that the small area plan process may be a key to unlocking some of that, but you know that it actually isn't, and then you don't say that, or you don't come back to us and say that, or have that conversation internally, or whatever you need to do, and I think we have good relationships. I think one of the great things about this is you're in a space where these are people who have great relationships, and we got city council members in our phones. I'm cool with Bo and Sarah as far as I know. Like I'm not. This is a conversation among neighbors in some sense, and yet the gravity of it, if you really know what's going on in the neighborhood up around Red Maple and Dearborn, is as crucial as it could be. It's no less intense, and it's no less vital and imminent that we come with solutions than it is over in the Fayetteville Street corridor. It's an equivalent challenge, and it's not the same as what's happening in Lakewood West End. It's not the same as what's happening in Walltown, because the timeline and the timeline of progression of events, the sequence of events, is further along in those areas. It is coming this way over here. So please help us think with clarity and act accordingly, right? Because nobody in this room is going to stop doing what they're doing just because the small area plan doesn't turn out to be the golden ticket. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all so much. I hear this. It's a lot to think about, and I think me and Scott want to be really thoughtful about how we move forward, because this is new. And I think from our planning experience, small area plans of the past have not been effective, and we're trying to figure out how best to make this useful, and for sure. Okay. Okay. I really appreciate everyone taking the extra time. Um, I will, I guess, unless somebody has something else to say, I'll just wrap this up so that folks can go back to dinner or bed or whatever you need to do. Um, what the next steps are, as we're thinking about how we proceed and how we narrow the focus of this project, we'll be in touch with this group because y'all have participated in this, and I love that, and I love that I have names and faces. So please look out for information from me, and maybe one-on-one meetings on the webpage, which I'll send out by email as well. There's a way to schedule a meeting one-on-one with me and Scott, where we can talk through if you have additional thoughts or things you want to dig in deeper with us one-on-one, we can do that. And yeah, and I'll follow up with this video recording. So if y'all need to refresh this, and then folks can catch up. So I think with that, did I miss anything, Scott? As far as okay, we will be in touch. I promise. I really appreciate your time and your conversation and your honesty with us as we muddle through whatever this this turns out to be. Cool. Thank you all. Happy holidays. Yes. Be safe,
Thanks,
Yes,
everybody.
everybody. Happy holidays.
be safe out there. Happy holidays, everybody.